This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
After the draft decision memo was leaked from the Supreme Court, we are witnessing a rush to the finish line, a rush to the regression finish line from the Republican Party. The same people who said, no, we're not going to overturn Roe versus Wade. That is settled law. That is precedent. The Supreme Court would never do that. That's not our objective. Those same people, in the face of the almost certain overturning in late June, are now saying, don't worry about contraception. That is not on the table. Don't worry about marriage equality. Not on the table. Don't worry about interracial marriage or a number of other constitutionally protected rights. Don't worry about that. Well, they're liars because they said don't worry about Roe versus Wade, and here we are. The other thing that's happening across the country is that there are states all over the nation who have trigger laws. They're called trigger laws that go into place that will go into effect as soon as Roe versus Wade is overturned. And Mississippi is one of those states. And their dumb governor, Tate Reeves, went on the morning shows yesterday. And listen, I just don't understand being the governor of a state and tripping all over yourself to get on camera and then not being even a decent political communicator. It's baffling to me. Anyway, I'm going to play a couple clips. First is Tate Reeves on with Jake Tapper from CNN. Asked directly about the availability or the possible banning of contraception. And Tate Reeves, in the clumsiest fashion imaginable, just doesn't answer the question, tries to avoid it. Before that, though, there was this moment where he's talking about the fact that they are not allowing an exception for rape and incest. That if a father rapes his daughter and impregnates her, she will be forced to carry not only her rapist's child, a fetus, and then a child, she will also be forced to carry her father's, her family members' child to finality. It is cruel. It is barbaric. It is Stone Age, Old Testament nonsense that they're going to try to inflict on our modern world. Watch this first moment about that, and then we'll get to the thing about the contraceptions.
So the snapback law that was passed in 2007 has no exception for incest. So assuming that the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, the state of Mississippi will force girls and women who are the victims of incest to carry those childs to term. Can you explain why that is going to be your law?
Well, that's going to be the law because in 2007, the Mississippi legislature passed it. I will tell you, Jake, and this sort of speaks to how far the Democrats in Washington have come on this issue. But in 2007, when the trigger law was put in place, we had a Democrat Speaker of the House, and we had a Democrat Chairman of the Public Health Committee in the Mississippi House of Representatives.
But why are you going to
particular piece of legislation?
Why is it acceptable in your state to force girls who are victims of incest to carry those children to term?
Well, as you know, Jake, over 92% of all abortions in America are elective procedures. When you look at the number of those that actually are involved in incest, it's less than 1%. And if we need to have that conversation in the future about potential exceptions in the trigger law, we can certainly do that. But the reality is that, again, that affects less than 1% of all abortions in America on an annual basis.
Okay, but that is going to be the law of Mississippi. Let me ask you, what about a fetus that has serious or fatal abnormalities that will not allow that fetus to live outside the womb? Is the state of Mississippi going to force those girls and women who have this tragedy inside them to carry the child to term? Are you going to force them to do that?
Well, Jake, I'll tell you, I think that these questions illustrate exactly what we've been talking about, and that is you're dealing in examples that are rare and are a very small percentage of the overall abortions.
So there's a few things here. One, he's talking about if we need to have that conversation in the future, we can certainly do that. The time is now, Tate Reeves. The time is now. And the fact that it's fewer than 1%, less than 1%, why not carve out in the law an exception for those cases rather than it's only a few people who are going to be forced to carry what can only be described as an intense, maybe irreparable trauma for them. Why not carve it out? The answer is because they don't care. They do want a Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale type of dystopia. That's what they want for America. It's white men controlling women. And if you think that it's just this horror, it's not. There are other things that they're going to try to ban, and that's access to basic contraception. Again, I talk about dragging us back to the 50s and the 60s in regressive politics. Hard fights were fought to get contraception, to get access to safe, affordable, accessible reproductive health care for women. And they want to roll it all back. Watch this clip. This is of him just clumsily not answering the question about banning contraception.
But just to be clear, the state of Mississippi, you're not going to then target IUD or Plan B, which are methods of birth control that might not allow a fertilized egg to be implanted. And this is not a theoretical construct. This is not the state of Louisiana, which I recognize is a neighboring state, not your state. I mean, they're talking about not only criminally charging girls and women who get abortions as being committing homicide, but they're also talking about defining the moment of conception as fertilization, which would theoretically, if this were to become the law of Louisiana, and it is not yet, mean that murder, if you use an IUD, you are committing murder theoretically. So it's not, I'm not making this up. These are the conversations going on in legislatures in your area. But so just to be clear, you have no intention of seeking to ban IUDs or Plan B.
That is not what we're focused on at this time. We're focused on looking at see what the court allows for. The bill that is before the court is a 15-week ban. We believe that the overturning of Roe is the correct decision by the court, and so in Mississippi we don't have laws on the books that would lead to arresting individuals or anything along those lines.
You mean not arresting girls or women, but you would arrest doctors?
Well, certainly, I don't think that that you're going to see doctors performing abortions if we have a state statute which says that they are not allowable except for those exceptions that we've mentioned earlier.
Two things there. One, at the end there about the doctor, well, I don't think they're going to be performing abortions if we outlaw it. He didn't answer the question about whether they would jail them if they did. The second thing is, we don't have laws on the book at this time. That's not something we're looking at right now, banning contraception at this time. And you may think, this is just clumsy. This is just some dumb, just clumsy language. He travels with a team, communications experts, ostensibly. And JTAP's show, State of the Union, comes on before Chuck Todd's show, Meet the Press. And here's a clip from later, a few minutes later, when he's on Chuck Todd's show. And he's asked the very same thing. And actually, he didn't get more adroit in his answer. He didn't get more skillful. It got worse. Watch this.
You've just said that you believe life begins at conception. if there is legislation brought to you to ban contraception, would you sign it?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen in Mississippi. I'm sure they'll have those conversations in other
you're not
states.
answering the question.
As is always the case with things, well, that's always the case. There's so many things that we can talk about. What the next movement in the pro-life movement, in my view, Chuck, is simple, and that is we must prove that being pro-life is not just about anti-abortion. What we want to do next is we want to continue to focus on the two things that are very important, and that is ensuring that those expectant mothers have the resources that they need. That's why in Mississippi this year we invested significant additional resources in pregnancy resource centers, and that we're working to build a system. We have 37 of those in Mississippi, and we're working to build a system throughout our state to ensure that every expectant mother has access to the information and the education that they need. The second piece of the equation and the second piece of the next phase of the pro-life movement is we've got to make sure that we make it easier on those babies that are born either through the potential for adoptive services. We've got to make it easier for adoptions. We've got to find resources for adoptions. We've got to also make sure that we improve our foster care system. In Mississippi, for instance, we invested over $100 million combined of our ARPA funds as well as other state funds to improve technology at our Department of Human Services, at our Child Protection Services, so that those babies that are not adopted, that end up in our foster care system, that we care for them, and we do so in a way that recognizes the importance of the next phase.
I'm not going to answer your question. There's so many things we can talk about. I want to answer questions that weren't asked. If there is legislation brought to you to ban contraception, would you sign it? It should be an easy question. If there is legislation brought to you to ban birth control pills, would you sign it? I don't think that's going to happen in Mississippi. To which Chuck Todd, who's not always great, said, "You're not answering the question." The conversation goes on. He doesn't come back to it. They don't address it again. These people need to have their feet held to the fire. There needs to be an uprising, the likes of which has not been seen for decades, over this issue. They are trying to drag us back to 1950. And it won't just be abortion rights. It won't just be access to contraception. There will be a racial rights rollback. There will be a marriage equality rollback. They know now that this Supreme Court is but a tool. It is a means to an end. And they know that they will get the most outrageous rulings because they have a radical, activist Supreme Court. A radical led by, fueled by, motivated by religion. Maybe not your religion. It's certainly not my religion. And that will be the law of the land. It's not hyperbole. It is absolutely not exaggeration. This is where we're heading. And Congress must do something while they have a majority in the House and a majority, slim may it be, a majority in the Senate and a Democratic president in the White House. They must act. You can't rely on Republicans to do the right thing because they are bound and determined to do the exact opposite. And not just a bad thing, but a terrible thing. What do you think? I'd love to know. You can call, leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for engaging with my content. We need your activism and your energy. I understand feeling down, feeling defeated. That is natural. But if you don't double down, if you don't stare this threat down with a steely-eyed determination and a plan in place, they're going to win. And this country is going to be fundamentally changed. Your rights will be curtailed in a fundamental way. Follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I'm at Dollemore on all of those. And if I bring you value, if you appreciate what I do, if you want to join in this work and help me produce this show, you can click the join button below this video, become a channel member for as little as $1.99 a month, or you can go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. I love you guys. I appreciate you very much. I'll see you next time. Until I do, be genuine. Take care of one another.